Did you know there was a time in Indian history when Greek kings were issuing orders in the Punjab? Roman gold was literally draining the Roman Empire dry to pay for Deccan spices, and a headless statue, just a torso and legs, told us more about imperial identity than 1,000 distinct manuscripts.
It really sounds like the plot of a massive fantasy novel, doesn't it?
It does, like Game of Thrones meets the Silk Road, but this isn't fantasy.
Not at all. This is the reality of the post-Mauryan world. We are stepping into what is arguably the most dynamic, chaotic, and innovative 500 years of ancient India, the period between the empires.
Absolutely. We are looking at a time that, older historians used to kind of dismiss, but which modern historians realize is the crucible of Indian culture.
It's where so much of what we consider Indian was forged.
Exactly. Now, before we unravel this chaotic tapestry, and trust me, it is a chaotic one, I have a very humble request for all of you listening. If you're enjoying this journey through history, and we hope you are, please take a moment to subscribe to the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel.
It really helps us out. And if you're capable, please consider supporting us on Patreon. It is genuinely your support that keeps this super useful content coming.
We really can't do it without you. And on that note, we have to give a warm shout out to all our current supporters. Your contributions essentially help us keep the lights on and the research flowing.
We appreciate it more than you know.
Yeah.
Seriously.
We really do. Also, the YouTube basics, don't forget to like the video and share your valuable comments. We actually read them, and they help the algorithm find other learners just like you.
Now, for the resources. This is important. We have free notes with practice PYQs. That's previous year questions, of course.
Yeah.
And they're available on our public Telegram channel.
They are. But, and this is the key, if you want access to all the videos in this series at once, plus the organized premium notes,
which are a whole other level. They include super detailed notes, extra PYQs that we don't cover elsewhere, and even model mains answers.
Then you should join the private Telegram library.
It's the best way to get everything organized in one place. Just DM on the public Telegram channel to join.
Okay, logistics handled. Let's get into the meat of this. We're diving into History of Ancient and Early Medieval India by Upinder Singh. And we're zeroing in on Chapter 8, Interaction and Innovation, spanning roughly 200 BCE to 300 CE.
So what's our mission statement for today?
Our mission is to synthesize. We need to look at the political fragmentation, the economic boom, and the incredible cultural synthesis of this period.
But, and this is the important part, we need to tailor it specifically for the UPSC aspirant, for the learner. We aren't just reciting dates and names. We're building arguments, connecting sources, thinking about how you'd use this in a mains exam.
The big picture here is just fascinating because traditionally, old history books, maybe something your parents read in college, would look at the time after the Mauryas and before the Guptas and just whisper.
Dark Age.
Exactly, a dark age, an empty space between two glorious empires.
Which is a complete and total misnomer. Upinder Singh is very clear on this, and all modern scholarship agrees. This was not a dark age. It was a period of intense interaction and innovation.
It's like when a big central authority collapses, it doesn't lead to silence. It leads to a cacophony of new voices, new rulers, new ideas.
That is a perfect way to put it. It's like breaking up a monopoly. Suddenly you have competition.
And that competition drives everything.
It does. The political fragmentation actually fueled economic competition and, crucially, cultural exchange. You had invaders coming in, yes, but they weren't just burning things down and leaving.
No, they were settling, trading, and this is the key part, becoming Indian.
That's the story of this era, assimilation and synthesis.
So let's start at the beginning of that story. Section 1, the political landscape of North India. The Mauryan Empire, which covered almost everything, just crumbles. How does the biggest empire in Indian history just end?
Well, it ends with a bang, not a whimper. It's actually quite dramatic. Around 187 BCE, the last Mauryan king, a ruler named Kshatrapas, is assassinated.
And he isn't killed by some foreign invader or a palace conspiracy in the dark.
No, it's very public. He's killed by his own commander-in-chief, his top general, Pushmitra Shunga.
A military coup, a classic story.
A textbook military coup. Pushmitra organizes a grand parade of the Mauryan army, and in the middle of this review, he kills the king and declares himself the new ruler. This marks the beginning of the Shunga dynasty.
Wow. And Pushmitra Shunga wasn't exactly a figure who promoted, let's say, Mauryan ideals.
Far from it. He was a Brahmin general, and his coup is often seen as a reaction against the Mauryan patronage of Buddhism. He sought to reestablish Vedic authority and rituals.
Like the Ashvamedha, the horse sacrifice.
Precisely. But what makes the Shunga period so interesting for us isn't just their administration, it's the sources that tell us about the conflicts of the time. For instance, we have the play, the Gautamiputra.
Written by Kalidasa, the Shakespeare of Sanskrit. But he wrote centuries later, right, during the Gupta period.
He did, but he's looking back and dramatizing historical events from the Shunga era. The play references a very specific conflict between Prince Vasumitra, who was Pushamitra's grandson, and the Yavanas.
The Yavanas, the Indo-Greeks.
Yes, and the conflict is over the sacrificial horse of the Ashramita.
Right, the horse sacrifice. The ultimate declaration of sovereignty. You let a consecrated horse roam for a year, and any territory it wanders into is yours, unless another king challenges it by capturing the horse.
And that's exactly what happens. The Yavanas capture the horse at the banks of the Sindhu River, which leads to a fierce battle. It paints this vivid picture of a constant border war. The Shungas are trying to hold the Ganga Valley, the heartland, while the Greeks are relentlessly pushing in from the northwest.
But the relationship wasn't just war, it was much more complicated.
So much more. And this brings us to one of the most important archaeological finds of this era, something every learner needs to have locked in, the Besnagar pillar inscription.
This is crucial. It completely flips the script on the simple idea of us versus them, or invader versus native. This is the pillar erected by Heliodorus, right?
Correct. So let's break this down. Who was Heliodorus? He was a Greek ambassador. He was sent by the Indo-Greek king Antilochus to the court of a Shunga ruler named Bhagabhadra.
So he's an official envoy from the enemy camp, so to speak?
Exactly. But look at what his inscription says. It's at a place called Besnagar, or Vidisha, in modern Madhya Pradesh. He erects this pillar, a Garuda pillar, which is associated with the god Vishnu.
A Garuda pillar.
And the inscription doesn't say, I, Heliodorus, the Greek diplomat. It calls him a Bhagavaka, a worshipper of Vasudeva, who is Krishna or Vishnu.
That is just wild when you stop and think about it. A Greek man, a representative of a foreign king, travels to central India and publicly declares himself a devotee of an early Hindu deity.
It's incredible evidence. It shows the sheer power of cultural assimilation. These foreigners weren't just standing apart. They were actively participating in and adopting the local culture, religion, and philosophy.
It challenges the binary of us versus them.
Completely. It suggests that the cultural border was much, much more porous than the political border. People were crossing it all the time.
Okay, speaking of the Greeks, let's zoom in on them. The Indo-Greeks, or the Yavanas. Who were they exactly? Because when people hear Greeks, they're probably picturing the Parthenon in Athens.
And that's not quite right. These were the Bactrian Greeks. Remember, after Alexander the Great's campaign, his generals inherited parts of his empire. One of those parts was Bactria, which is in and around modern-day Afghanistan.
So a Greek kingdom in Central Asia.
For centuries. And over time, facing pressure from other tribes and seeing opportunity to the south, they moved across the Hindu Kush Mountains into the subcontinent. They were already a hybrid Hellenistic Central Asian culture from the very start.
And the most famous of them all, one everyone's heard of, has to be Menander.
Or Milinda, as he's known in the Pali Buddhist texts. His legacy is immortalized not through conquest so much as through a text, the Milindapanha.
The Questions of Melinda, I love this text. It's so accessible.
It is. It's basically a philosophical dialogue, almost like a Platonic dialogue, between King Menander and a Buddhist monk named Nagasena.
And the king asks these incredibly deep, probing philosophical questions. Things like, what is the self? If there is no soul, who is reborn?
And the monk, Nagasena, answers with these brilliant analogies. The most famous one is the chariot. He asks the king, is the chariot the wheels, the axle, the frame?
No, it's none of those things individually.
Yet it's the combination of the parts that we label chariots. And he says the self is the same. It's just a convenient label for a collection of changing physical and mental components.
It's a profound Buddhist teaching, but what it shows us historically is a Greek king deeply intellectually engaged with Indian philosophy.
It's not just political patronage for appearances, it's genuine intellectual curiosity. But for a historian, and definitely for the UPSC exams, the Indo-Greeks are most famous for something very physical. Their coins.
Numismatics. Okay, so why are these coins such a big deal? What makes them different?
They completely revolutionized Indian coinage. Before them, we mostly had what are called punch-marked coins. These were irregular bits of silver with various symbols, a sun, a bull, a tree, just punched onto them. No text, no portraits.
Just symbols.
Right. The Indo-Greeks introduced die-struck coins. These were perfectly round, beautifully made, and most importantly, they had two things we'd never really seen before in India.
Okay, what are they?
First, a realistic portrait of the king on the front, the obverse, you could see his face, his helmet. And second, bilingual legends.
Greek on one side and a local language on the other.
Exactly. Greek on the obverse and Prakrit, written in the Kharosthi script, on the reverse.
And that's a goldmine for historians.
It's everything. Without these coins, we wouldn't even know the names of most of these kings. We've identified over 30 Indo-Greek rulers, many of whom are known only from their coins. They're literally the only source.
So the coins are the historical record.
They are. And while we often attribute the first gold coins to the Kushanas later on, the Indo-Greeks really pioneered the high-quality minting techniques that made it all possible. Their silver coins are works of art.
Okay, so the Greeks are in the Northwest, establishing kingdoms, minting coins, talking philosophy, but they don't have the stage to themselves for long. Then come the Shakas and the Pahlavas.
It feels like a revolving door of Central Asian tribes, doesn't it?
It really does. Why the sudden influx?
It's a domino effect happening on the steppes of Central Asia. The Yechi, who will later become the Kushanas, pushed the Shakas, or Scythians, out of their homeland. The Shakas, in turn, migrate south and west.
And they push into the areas the Indo-Greeks control.
Exactly. They overthrow the Greeks in many areas and establish their own rule, which they organized into satrapies, or provinces. These were led by military governors called Kshatrapas, who eventually became independent kings.
And for the UPSC, the most significant of these are the Western Kshatrapas in the Gujarat-Malwa region.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they come into direct and prolonged conflict with the great power of the Deccan, the Satavahanas. And their story is told through one of the most important inscriptions in all of ancient India.
The Junagadh rock inscription.
Also known as the Gandhara inscription, of the Shaka ruler Rudradaman I.
Okay, let's camp out here for a bit. Why is this one rock so special? I know it's a favorite for examiners.
It is, for two huge reasons. First, the language. This is the first major long inscription written in chaste high Sanskrit.
The first. What were they using before?
Prakrit. Ashoka's edicts, the Satavahana inscriptions, they were all in various forms of Prakrit, the language of the common people. Sanskrit was the language of Vedic ritual, but not yet of public royal proclamations.
So it's a foreign Shaka ruler who elevates Sanskrit to the language of political power. That's deeply ironic.
It's incredibly ironic. The outsider becomes a champion of the elite, traditional language, to legitimize his rule. It's a masterstroke of cultural politics.
So that's the first reason. What's the second?
The content of the inscription. It records the repair of the Sudarshana lake. And it gives us the history of this lake.
It's not just about his achievement, he's contextualizing it.
Perfectly. He tells us that the lake was originally created during the reign of Chandragupta Maurya by his governor Pushyagupta. Then, during Ashoka's reign, his governor Tushasva added canals to it.
So he's explicitly naming the great Mauryan emperors.
Yes, and then he says that a terrible storm destroyed the dam and the lake burst its banks. His own ministers advised against repairing it, saying it was too expensive. But Rudradaman, being a great king, overruled them and repaired it using his own personal treasury without taxing the people.
So what's the message he's sending?
The message is crystal clear. I, Rudradaman Ashoka, am the true successor to the great imperial tradition of Chandragupta and Ashoka. He's showing that legitimacy comes from acting like a proper Indian Chakravartin king, upholding dharma, protecting your subjects, and maintaining public works.
He didn't tear down the Mauryan dam, he fixed it. He's inserting himself into their lineage.
Precisely. It's an act of continuity and assimilation, all recorded in the new power language of Sanskrit, a truly remarkable document.
This period is just layer upon layer. Okay, so moving chronologically, after the Shakas, we get the next big players, the Kushanas. They come from the Yuchi tribe we mentioned earlier.
Yes, the very same ones who pushed the Shakas out. They eventually consolidate and build a massive empire.
And when you say massive, what are we talking about?
We're talking about an empire that stretched from the Aral Sea and the Oxus River in Central Asia through Afghanistan, Pakistan, and all the way into the Ganga Valley up to Varanasi. It was a true trans-regional empire that controlled the heart of the Silk Road.
And the superstar of the Kushanas is Kanishka.
Without a doubt, Kanishka the Great. His reign is a major landmark. He was a huge patron of Buddhism.
He's the one who convened the Fourth Buddhist Council, right?
Yeah, he did. Traditionally said to have been held in Kashmir. And this council is a huge deal because it's where the great schism in Buddhism was more or less formalized. It's where Mahayana Buddhism really comes into its own as a distinct school.
We'll circle back to that later. But politically, What are the key sources for Kanishka?
A crucial one, discovered relatively recently in the 1990s, is the Rabatak inscription from Afghanistan.
What did Rabatak tell us that we didn't know before?
It was a game changer. For a long time, Kanishka's genealogy was really confused. The inscription, written in the Bactrian language using Greek script, lays it out clearly. It lists his great-grandfather, grandfather, and father, confirming the lineage of the dynasty. It also lists the cities in India that were under his control, giving us a much clearer picture of the empire's extent.
So it clarified the timeline and the geography.
Exactly. But for visual learners, for something you can actually see, the most striking artifact is the headless statue of Kanishka.
I mentioned that in the intro. The headless statue found at Mat, near Mathura. It's so iconic.
It's incredible. Even without a head, it tells you so much. You look at that statue, and you know immediately that this is not a traditional Indian king in a dhoti.
No way. He's wearing boots, heavy boots.
Heavy padded boots, a long, thick, belted tunic, and a heavy overcoat. This is the classic gear of a Central Asian horse-riding warrior from the steppes.
And he's wearing this in the heat of Mathura.
Which tells you it's not about comfort, it's about identity. His royal artists were instructed to portray him in the martial attire of his ancestors. It's a perfect visual metaphor for this entire era of interaction. The statue's very existence in Mathura, a center of Indian culture, shows his Indian kingship. But the clothes he wears.
They signal his foreign origins.
Yes. It says, "I am the emperor of India, but my roots are in the steppe." It's a statement of dual identity.
Incredible. Okay, let's shift our gaze. That was a whirlwind tour of the North. Let's travel south. While the North was dealing with this revolving door of invasions and integrations, what was happening in the Deccan?
The Deccan sees the rise of a major indigenous power, the Satavahanas. In the Puranas, they're also referred to as the Andhras.
And they were kind of the bridge, weren't they, geographically and culturally, between the North and the far South?
That's a great way to put it. They controlled the Deccan Plateau, which meant they controlled the crucial trade routes connecting the northern ports on the west coast with the eastern ports and the southern kingdoms. They were the middlemen.
And who was their most famous ruler?
That would have to be Gautamiputra Satakarni. He's celebrated as the greatest of the Satavahana kings.
Gautamiputra, son of Gautami. That's a metronymic using the mother's name.
It is, and it's a very specific and curious Satavahana trait. It wasn't just him. Later rulers did it too, like Vishishtaputra Pulamavi, the son of Vishishti.
So the obvious question that comes up, and it's a common trap for learners, does this mean they were a matriarchal society? Did women rule?
It's a great question, but the scholarly consensus is no. It wasn't a matriarchal society in the sense of power passing through the female line. The succession was definitely patrilineal, from father to son.
So what does it signify then?
It almost certainly signifies the incredibly high status that royal women held. The Queen Mother was a figure of great prestige. It might also have been a practical way to distinguish between the sons of different wives in a polygamous royal court. Naming the mother made the lineage clear.
So Gautamiputra Satakarni, he had some pretty grand claims in his inscriptions. He called himself Ika Brahmana.
Yes, the unique Brahmana, or the peerless Brahmin. And in the same breath, he claimed to be the destroyer of the pride of the Kshatriyas.
That's a powerful statement. He's a Brahmin who's also the greatest warrior.
Exactly. He's also described as someone who stopped the mixing of the Varnas, who upheld the traditional social order.
Which is interesting because who was his main enemy? The Shakas, who were, in the eyes of the Brahminical system, foreigners or militias.
Right. His greatest military achievement was defeating the Shaka ruler Nafapana. And we have fantastic numismatic evidence for this. Archaeologists found a huge hoard of Nahapana's silver coins.
Let me guess, he melted them down.
Even better. He took Nahapana's coins and re-struck them. He literally stamped his own name and symbols right over the face of the defeated king.
That is the ultimate power move. I beat you, and now your money is my money. It literally has my name on it.
It's a very clear message of victory and humiliation. But beyond their wars, the Satavahanas are crucial for another reason, a topic that is huge for UPSC mains: land grants.
Right, this is where it all begins.
The Junagadh inscription and others from the Satavahana period record the earliest instances of royal land grants to Brahmins and to Buddhist monks.
Why are these grants so significant? It's just giving away some land, isn't it?
But the king didn't just give land. He often gave away administrative and judicial rights along with it. The grant would specify that the king's soldiers or police could not enter the gifted village, that royal officials could not collect taxes from it.
So the state is voluntarily giving up its power over these pockets of territory. It's creating tax-free, autonomous zones.
Precisely. And many historians, like R.S. Sharma, argue this is the seed of what later develops into Indian feudalism. If you give away enough of your administrative rights, you eventually create a class of powerful landed intermediaries, Brahmin communities, monasteries, who are more powerful than the state in their local area.
It's the beginning of the decentralization of power.
That's the argument. It's a very important long-term trend to track.
And what about their economy? We mentioned their control of trade. What do their coins tell us?
Their coins were very practical, mostly made of lead, also potan, which is a base metal alloy, and copper. Not much gold or silver, but the symbols on them are key.
What kind of symbols?
Ships. Many Satavahana coins depict ships with two masts, sometimes in great detail. This is a clear and direct indication of the importance of maritime trade to their economy. They were looking out towards the sea. They were trading with Rome to the west and Southeast Asia to the east.
Which leads us perfectly to the next region. Let's go even further south, the far south, the Sangam Age. This is a topic the UPSC has been very interested in lately.
It is, and for good reason. We're now talking about Tamilakam, the land of the Tamils, south of the Tirupati Hills, a world with its own distinct language, culture, and political structure.
And at the top of this structure were the three crowned kings, the Movendar,
The Cholas, the Cheras, and the Pandyas. And for any prelims exam, you have to know their emblems and capitals like the back of your hand.
Let's run through them. The Cholas.
Emblem is the tiger. Their main capital was at Uraiyur, famous for cotton, and their port city was Puhar, also known as Kavaripatnam.
The Cheras.
Their emblem is the bow. They control the western coast, modern-day Kerala, and the all-important port of Muziris, a major hub for Roman trade.
And finally, the Pandyas.
Emblem is the fish. Their capital was at Madurai, which was also the site of the legendary Sangam academies.
But this political setup wasn't like the Mauryan Empire with a centralized bureaucracy.
Not at all. It was a more fluid system. You have to make a distinction between the Vendar, the three crowned kings, and the numerous Valir, who were local chieftains.
So what's the difference in their power?
Scale and legitimacy, mostly. The Vendar were the big three, with lineage and prestige. The Valir were smaller, often hill chieftains, but they were also very important patrons of poets and culture. The economy itself was based less on a regular, systematic land tax.
And more on what?
More on tribute and plunder. It was what historians call a heroic society. War was a central economic activity. You'd raid your neighbor's territory, lift their cattle, and then redistribute that booty among your warriors and the poets who sang your praises.
So the loyalty of your followers depended on your success in war.
Absolutely. It was a system of charismatic leadership and continuous conflict.
And we know all of this in such vivid detail because of the Sangam literature.
The Sangam corpus is one of the treasures of world literature. It's unique. It's broadly divided into two main categories, Akam and Puram.
Akam being the interior, right? The world of love, family, emotions.
Yes. And the literary convention in Akam poetry is that it's anonymous. You don't name the specific hero or heroine. It's about the universal experience of love in its various phases, set against 5 distinct landscapes, or tine.
But Puram is the exterior. That's where we get the history.
That's where they name names. Puram poetry is about the public sphere, war, kings, death, ethics, the community. Here, the poets will sing, King Karikalachola did this brave deed, or King Nadunchelian gave this generous gift. That's our primary source for the political history of the era.
Now, there was a question in the 2022 prelims, a statement-based question, which is a classic UPSC trap.
I remember it. It was about social classification.
The statement was something like, the social classification of Varna was known to Sangam poets. True or false?
And the correct answer is true. It was known.
Now, that might confuse some people because we think of the Varna system as a northern Sanskritic thing and the south having its own social structure.
And it did. The Tamil society had its own classifications, like the Kudi, which were clan-based groups often tied to profession in the landscape they inhabited. But, and this is the key, the Sangam poems explicitly mention Brahmins. They talk about Vedic sacrifices. They use some Sanskrit loanwords.
So the concept of Varna had arrived. It was part of the cultural conversation.
Exactly. It was known, even if the society wasn't rigidly organized according to it, in the same way the theoretical texts from the North described. It shows that the cultural interaction between North and South was already deep and had been going on for a long time.
And we can't leave the South without mentioning the great epics that come a bit later, but look back on this period, Silappatikaram and Manimekalai.
Silappatikaram, the tale of the anklet. It is an absolute masterpiece. It follows the story of Kannagi and Kovalan, and it moves through the capitals of all three kingdoms. It gives us these incredibly rich, detailed descriptions of urban life, the streets, the merchants, the markets of Puar and Madurai.
It's a window into a society that is wealthy, urban, cosmopolitan, and deeply engaged in trade.
It is. Which brings us right to the engine of all this culture and conflict, the economy. This whole 500-year period is often called the mature phase of the second urbanization.
Cities were not just administrative centers, they were buzzing economic hubs.
Everywhere. Mathura in the north was a massive hub, not just for religion, but for trade. Axila in the northwest, Ujjain in the center, and the port cities we've mentioned, Barigaza, Muziris, Kavrapatinam, and a very special one, Arikamedu.
And the lifeblood of these cities was craft production, and these crafts were highly organized into guilds, or Shrenis.
The Shrenis were fascinating institutions. They weren't just simple trade unions. They were so much more. They acted as banks, accepting deposits and paying interest. They had their own laws and could adjudicate disputes between members. They even had their own militias in some cases.
And they were mobile. This is a key point.
It is. And the classic example, the one everyone must know, is the Mandsaur inscription of the silk weavers.
It's a beautiful story. Tell us about it.
So this inscription is from a later period, the Gupta era, but it's talking about events that happened earlier. It describes a guild of silk weavers who originally lived in Lalata, which is in Gujarat.
A whole community of weavers.
Yes. And they hear, through their networks, that the king of Dashpura, which is Mandsaur in modern Madhya Pradesh, is a very good ruler, and that there are better business prospects there. So what do? The entire guild migrates, en masse, hundreds of miles to a new home.
They literally moved their whole industry.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. The inscription tells us that once they settled in Mandsaur, they prospered so much that they didn't all have to stick to weaving. Some of them became expert archers and warriors. Others took up the study of astrology and narrative arts.
Wow, so they diversified their profession.
They did. And collectively, as a guild, they became so wealthy that they commissioned and built a magnificent temple to the sun god.
That one story just blows the idea of a rigid, unchanging, caste-based profession system right out of the water.
It complicates it immensely. It shows that, at least for these organized urban craft groups, there was significant social and economic mobility. A weaver could become a soldier or a scholar. The guild provided the community and the capital, but individuals within it had agency.
And where was all this money, this prosperity, coming from? A huge chunk of it was flowing in from the West. We're talking about the legendary Indo-Roman trade.
This was one of the great global trade networks of the ancient world. Pliny the Elder, a Roman historian from the 1st century CE, famously complained about it.
What was his complaint?
He lamented that the Roman Empire was being drained of its gold and silver to pay for Indian luxuries. He calculated the figure at something like 100 million sesterces a year. He called India the sink of the world's gold.
And what were the Romans buying that was so valuable?
The big one was pepper from the Malabar coast, called black gold. Also fine textiles like muslin from Bengal, pearls, ivory, precious stones, and even exotic animals for the Roman arenas.
And we have a guidebook for this trade, don't we?
We do, an incredible text called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. It was written by an anonymous Greek sailor living in Egypt. It's a practical merchant's handbook. It lists all the ports along the Indian coast, what you could sell there, what you should buy there, what the political situation is. It's an invaluable source.
Go to Barigaza for this, but watch out for the tides. Go to Muziris for pepper, that kind of thing.
Exactly that. And archaeology backs all of this up in the most spectacular way at sites like Arikamedu near modern Pondicherry.
What did they find at Arikamedu?
Sir Mortimer Wheeler's excavations there in the 1940s were groundbreaking. They found a Roman trading station. They unearthed large quantities of Roman artifacts, amphorae, which were the big clay jars used to transport wine and olive oil, and fragments of Aretine ware, which was a high-end glossy red Roman tableware.
So physical proof of Romans, or at least Roman goods, on Indian soil.
Undeniable proof. Arikamedu itself seems to have been a major industrial center for making beads and other goods specifically for export back to the Roman world. It was a globalized manufacturing hub 2,000 years ago.
So the economy is booming, cities are rising, money is pouring in from abroad, foreigners are arriving and settling. This has to have a massive transformative impact on religion.
It absolutely did. It transformed it from the inside out. Let's start with Buddhism. This is the era where Buddhism undergoes its most significant split. We see the rise of Mahayana, the great vehicle.
How does Mahayana differ from the older tradition, which they started calling Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle?
There are a few key shifts. The biggest one is the status of the Buddha himself. In the older Theravada tradition, the Buddha was a great teacher, an enlightened human being who found the path and showed it to others. He was revered, but he was a man.
And in Mahayana?
In Mahayana, he becomes deified. He becomes a transcendent, almost godlike being to whom you can pray for salvation. And this leads directly to the next big shift, the move from symbolic worship to image worship.
Before this, they didn't make statues of the Buddha.
That's right. Early Buddhist art represented the Buddha through symbols. A pair of footprints, the Bodhi tree under which he was enlightened, an empty throne, or the wheel of Dharma. You worship the symbol of his presence or his teaching.
But Mahayana changes that.
It does. The new emphasis on bhakti, or devotion to a divine Buddha, created a demand for images, for statues that people could see and pray to. This is linked to the third great Mahayana idea, the bodhisattva ideal.
A bodhisattva is someone who is on the path to enlightenment.
But who compassionately chooses to delay their own final nirvana in order to stay in the world and help all other beings achieve enlightenment first. It's a much more outward-looking, compassionate, and inclusive vision of Buddhism.
And this demand for images, for art, leads to this incredible explosion of creativity. The art schools. This is a favorite topic for the mains exam. The Gandhara versus Mathura versus Amaravati debate.
It's a classic. Let's break them down simply. First, the Gandhara school, located in the northwest, in the heart of Kushana territory with all its foreign influences.
What are its characteristics?
They primarily used a blue-gray schist stone, and the style is heavily influenced by Greco-Roman art. This is what's sometimes called Greco-Buddhist art.
That's why the Buddha from Gandhara often looks like a Greek god, like Apollo.
Exactly. You see realistic anatomical details in the body. You see wavy, curly hair tied up in a bun, which looks very much like a Greek hairstyle. And the robes have these deep, heavy folds of drapery that look just like a Roman toga. The expression is often serene, calm, and inward-looking.
Okay, so that's Gandhara. Then you have the Mathura school, right in the northern heartland.
Mathura is a world away stylistically. First, the material. They used a distinctive local spotted red sandstone. And the style is completely indigenous. It didn't evolve from Greek art. It evolved from the local tradition of carving monumental statues of yakshas and yaksis, who were folk nature spirits.
So what does a Mathura Buddha look like?
He's powerful, energetic. The body is often more fleshy and robust. The robes are much sheerer, almost transparent, clinging to the body rather than concealing it in heavy folds. And crucially, the eyes are wide open, and there's often a slight smile on the face. It's a much more outward-looking, engaged expression compared to the meditative Gandhara style.
Two totally different visions of the Buddha being created at the same time. And what about the third school, Amaravati in the south?
The Amaravati school in the Andhra region under the later Satavahanas is different again. They used a whitish limestone that almost looks like marble, and their great genius was for narrative art.
What do you mean by narrative art?
They weren't just carving single iconic statues of the Buddha. They were covering the great stupas there with panels that told stories from the Buddha's life or from the Jataka tales. These panels are incredibly dynamic, filled with dozens of figures all in motion. They create a sense of energy, of complex compositions that is unique to them.
So Gandhara is Greco-Roman realism, Mathura is indigenous power, and Amaravati is dynamic storytelling.
That's a very good summary.
So Buddhism is evolving dramatically, but Hinduism isn't standing still during this period either.
Not at all. This is an equally transformative period for what we now call Hinduism. This is the rise of theistic Hinduism, the great shift from the old Vedic religion, which was centered on complex, elite fire sacrifices, or yajnas,
to the new Puranic religion centered on devotion, or bhakti, to a personal god.
puja over yajna. That's the core of the change. It's the rise of the great devotional sects. Vaishnavism, the worship of Vishnu, becomes hugely popular, especially through the cult of Vasudeva Krishna and the developing concept of the avatars.
The idea that Vishnu descends to earth in various forms to save humanity.
Precisely. We also see the dramatic rise of Shaivism, the worship of Shiva, both in his aniconic linga form and in his anthropomorphic human forms. And alongside them, Shaktism, the worship of the great goddess in her various forms like Durga and the Matrikas.
This shift feels like it's making religion more accessible.
It's democratizing it. You don't need to be a wealthy king who can afford a massive, complicated fire sacrifice conducted by a team of Brahmin priests. All you need is a flower and a pure heart to offer to the image of your chosen deity.
And this devotional, image-centric approach would have been much more accessible to the foreign groups we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. It's far easier for Greek like Heliodorus to embrace the Bhakti of Vasudeva than to try and fit into the exclusive and complex world of Vedic ritual. This new form of Hinduism was open and absorptive.
Which brings us neatly to the final piece of the puzzle, society. How did the existing Indian social fabric, the Varna system, handle all these powerful newcomers? The Greeks, the Shakas, the Kushanas, they were ruling, they were rich, but where did they fit?
This is where the theoretical genius and flexibility of the Brahma lawgivers comes into play. The Manusmriti, the great law book of Manu, which was likely being compiled and finalized around this time, faced a serious dilemma.
The dilemma being?
You have these powerful rulers. They control vast territories. They have armies. You can't just ignore them or call them low-caste Shudras because they're the ones in power. But at the same time, they're foreigners, mlecchas. They're outside the traditional fourfold Varna system. They aren't traditional Kshatriyas.
So what did they do? Did they just invent a loophole?
They invented a brilliant legal fiction, a way to absorb them into the hierarchy without breaking the model. They classified these foreign ruling groups as Vratya Kshatriyas,
which means
fallen or degenerated Kshatriyas. The logic was this. Oh, these people were originally Kshatriyas from India, but long ago they wandered away, lost contact with Brahmins, and forgot to perform the correct Vedic rituals. Therefore, they have fallen from their status.
But the crucial part is what has fallen can be raised up again.
Exactly. It implies that their Kshatriya status is reclaimable. If they uphold Dharma, protect cows and Brahmins, patronize the right religion, and perform the correct rituals, guided by Brahmin priests, of course, they can be purified and readmitted into the Kshatriya fold.
That is just incredibly clever and convenient. You're a warrior, just a rusty one. Pay the Brahmins, do the rituals, and you're back in the club.
It was a masterstroke of social engineering. It allowed for the assimilation of powerful foreign groups into the top of the social hierarchy, thereby gaining their patronage, all while maintaining the theoretical supremacy and structure of the Varna system. It stabilized society in a time of massive change.
We also see some interesting things about the status of women in the inscriptions, don't we? Beyond the Satavahana matronymics.
We do, especially at the great Buddhist sites, the stupas and caves, like Sanchi Amaravati or the rock-cut caves at Karlambaja. When you read the donor inscriptions, the little labels that say, this pillar was a gift from, a huge number of them are from women.
From all classes of society.
All classes. We have donations from nuns, from the wives of merchants and artisans, from female lay followers, and even from royal women.
And this implies they had their own money to donate. They had economic agency.
It strongly implies a degree of financial independence, or at least control over resources that we often assume ancient women didn't possess. They weren't just passive figures in the background. They were active participants and patrons in the religious and economic life of their communities.
So, to try and wrap this all up, it's been an incredible journey. We've gone from the military coup of the Shungas in the Gangetic Plain all the way down to the trade winds of the Sangam coast.
We've seen that this period between the empires was absolutely not a dark age. It was the crucible. It was where so many foundational elements of Indian culture were forged and remade.
The interaction with the Greco-Romans through trade, with the Central Asians through conquest and settlement, it didn't dilute Indian culture.
No, it enriched it. It acted as a catalyst.
Yeah.
And the innovation, the new art forms of Gandhara and Mathura, the new religious ideas of Mahayana Buddhism and Bhakti Hinduism, the new economic structures of the guilds, all of this laid the groundwork for what we call the classical age of the Guptas that was to follow.
It wasn't a dark age. It was a vibrant, chaotic, technicolor age.
I think if we want to connect this to a bigger picture, a final thought for people to take away. We often think of globalization as a modern phenomenon, something that happened with the internet.
Right.
But when you look at a single Kushana coin, and you see a king with a Persian-sounding title written in a modified Greek script, and on the reverse, an image of a Hindu or a Buddhist or even a Zoroastrian deity, you realize something profound.
What's that?
You see that the world was connected 2,000 years ago in ways we are only just beginning to fully understand. That this ancient cosmopolitanism was incredibly deep. So the question to ponder is, how does this ancient multicultural globalized world compare to our own? What's different and what surprisingly is the same?
That is a fantastic question to end on. Thank you for diving so deep with us today. Before you all go, just a quick final reminder. Please subscribe to Simplified UPSC by PPP.
And please support us on Patreon if you are capable. It truly makes all of this possible.
A huge shout out again to our amazing supporters, and for everyone, don't forget to like this video and share your valuable comments.
Remember, for the free notes and those practice PYQs, check out the public Telegram channel.
And for the full organized library of all the videos in our premium notes, with the detailed analysis, extra questions, and model mains answers, you need to join the private Telegram library.
Just DM on the public Telegram channel to join.
Until next time, keep learning.
Goodbye, everyone.